Hey everybody, welcome back to Dice Monkey. I'm Mark, and today I wanted to talk to you about Warhammer the Old World. Specifically, we're going to be talking about my very first game of Warhammer the Old World. This was Bretonnians versus the Wood Elves. I played against a guy who was also pretty new to it. He'd played one game before had played Wood Elves, but he, like me, had played Warhammer Fantasy before. I hadn't played in many editions. I was playing back when the Bretonnian versus Lizardmen box came out. He had played a bit more recently, so we decided to give it a try, and here's how it went. So, first of all, this was my 1,000-point list. I had my Baron. He was mounted on a warhorse with a Gromwell Greathelm. I had a damsel. She was a level 2 wizard. She was carrying the Ruby Ring of Ruin, which gave her Fireball. And then she had Battle Magic, and she was also on a warhorse, so she was going to be with one of my Mounted Knights of the Realm. Baron was with the other Mounted Knights of the Realm. I had 20 men-at-arms. We had 20 Peasant Bowmen. And then we had 10 Peasant Bowmen. The 10 Peasant Bowmen were skirmishers, so they were able to spread out a little bit. And the 20 Peasant Bowmen had the defensive stakes. And then I had 3 Pegasus Knights. So we were playing the meaty engagement, and that was diagonal setups, and it also had reserves. So if you rolled, I think it was a 1. Yeah, it's not saying there. So you have to, if you roll a 1, then you start off with them off the board. So I ended up rolling only my men-at-arms ended up off the board, whereas he ended up with about half of his army off the board. But they were allowed to enter on turn 2, which was nice. So there wasn't any super long delay, but he did have to start half of his guys off the board. So the spells that my damsel took, she had the Fireball, and then the Curse of Arrow Attraction and the Curse of Cowardly Flight. The Curse of Arrow Attraction and Cowardly Flight were both randomized. So I rolled those 2 up, whereas the Fireball was from her ring. I found that the Curse of Cowardly Flight wasn't super useful, and I did not end up using the Curse of Arrow Attraction, because as you'll see, the game ended up going pretty quick. So for deployment, we had No Man's Land right down the middle of the board, and I was set up in one corner, he was set up in the other. Because we were only playing 1,000 points, the board was much smaller, so we were engaging really quick. I specifically set up my Pegasus Knights there, down on the far left corner, basically to keep him from, when his reinforcements showed up, keep them from being able to get in behind me. So as you'll see how they ended up maneuvering, they ended up not being able to get in behind and attack my peasants in the back. I had my archers there up on the hillside. That meant that all 20 of them could shoot, and I think they only ended up getting 1 shot in, maybe not any at all. And with those defensive stakes, there was mostly there just to keep him from charging me. Turned it out not to be a problem, and by the archers being there, it kept him back to his corner of the board, because I was able to reach across most of the board, so that kept him out of the way. And then both my 2 Knights of the Realm set up there in the middle, and my skirmishers to the right. So turn 1, we ended up utilizing Blessings of the Lady. That means that I can choose to fail the roll off for first turn. I did so, and so I got that 6+ ward save, that it actually ended up saving me a few times. I don't think there was any strength 5 or higher attacks that were even coming in, so I didn't really have to worry about that. So he ended up taking first turn. Oh, we ended up skipping ahead. Okay, so turn 1, he had these mounted Wood Elves who came charging in towards my damsel. I got to use the counter charge maneuver, which I thought was pretty cool, where I get to move up to meet him part way, and then we both count as charging. And charging is super necessary for the Knights of the Realm specifically, and basically any cavalry with lances. So we ended up meeting up part way, and they went right up against my damsel, and it was pretty brutal. I was prepared for us to be locked in combat, and then I was going to bring my Duke around to take them on as well. But it turned out not to be necessary because after I ended up taking out 3 of his troops, he only took out 1 guy, who you can't see there, but he was removed from the back row. They ended up turning and fleeing, and I ended up running them down. Pretty much absolutely decimating them immediately. So that was... I lost 1 knight and ended up taking out an entire unit, which was really, really nice. His archers were not super effective at all. So there you can see me having finished running them down, and this is still on his turn, so I haven't done anything yet. My archers set up in the back, like I said, I think they ended up firing off 1 shot and didn't really do much. And after that, they basically just sat back there. I was prepared to start moving them forward, giving them a march to move up, but it didn't end up turning out to be necessary later on in the game. But they were like a full health unit, which was pretty nice. So then, in turn 2, this is where he dropped in basically his whole army back there. So he had a whole nother unit of men on horseback, and then he also had his tree men. The mounted guys ended up moving in to engage with my Baron and his knights, and then the tree men were moving in to engage with my Pegasus. Here you can see my unit with my damsel ended up sort of scurrying on ahead, getting pretty far ahead of everybody else. I was trying to catch up to the unicorn, and she ended up falling back, which ended up causing me to try to run her down further, and ended up really far into enemy lines, which I was pretty worried about. But then again, I still had my Baron with his full contingent, and my men-at-arms hadn't even showed up yet. So here I brought my Pegasus Knights around. This is where I had moved him in to block him from being able to deploy behind my lines at all. And I had them set up as skirmishers as well. And this is where we ended up hitting our actual engagement. So you can see down near the bottom, that's where my men-at-arms, they had marched in. They were in marching order, so I just turned the 4 side rows sideways to symbolize that they were going to be marching, and so I moved them at 3 times the speed, got them halfway across the battlefield, which was nice. And after his mounted troops ended up charging towards my Baron and his guys, they ended up retreating, and as they were retreating, then my damsel ended up using her fireball and completely removed the unit. So at that point, he had his Pegasus, his unicorn, which he fled into the woods. I'm not sure what he was planning on doing with them. He had like 3 small units of archers. He had his leader, and then when my Pegasus Knights engaged with the treemen, they ended up knocking out 1, and then there's a couple of rounds of like the treemen falling back and me charging back in and stuff. The way that the rules work was really interesting, because there just was this continual like running down and continual close combat, and I ended up knocking him down to just 1 treeman and still having all of my Pegasus Knights. So it was a pretty brutal fight. In the end, you can see up there, there's the 2 units of archers. One of them has lost 1 guy, and then I was fully prepared to engage my Pegasus Knights against them, and I was going to send my Baron up against his leader. I still fully had my damsel and her guys working, so I was ready to run down the unicorn, and then there was the 1 other unit of archers that I thought I'd be able to deal with pretty well with either my own skirmishing archers or with the men-at-arms, and they were still hanging back and ready to start taking things out if they needed to. There's where his leader ended up. I don't think his leader ended up doing anything in this battle. Like I said, this was only turn 2, so it was fairly short, and at that point I had smashed through him so badly that he ended up conceding. Back there is where you can see where the unicorn is hiding. I think maybe she had some spells that were going to help her out in the woods or something, because he immediately fled for the woods. There's that last unit there hanging out. They could have come in and sort of interfered with the side of my unit of Knights of the Realm, but they didn't at that point. Here's my unit with the damsel and her troops. Only lost 2 so far, so she was still at pretty good health, and she hadn't used much of her spells anyway so far. The Duke here, he's a really beastly, and with that Gromril Great Helm, he was going to be really, really durable, so I was pretty confident that they were going to do pretty well. Then these skirmishers, I was going to start assailing basically any of the archers that were around that I hadn't gotten to yet. I haven't noticed in the rules for moving into buildings like previous editions had. Maybe I just have overlooked it, but I'd like to get those guys into that tower to give them a higher vantage point. And then, like I said, my men-at-arms here, they were at full health and ready to basically move in and engage with whoever they needed to engage with. So I was pretty prepared for that. And then my Pegasus Knights still at full strength. So, and those Pegasus Knights are really, really tough. So I was ready to take basically anything on with them. And then all the way in the back that you can't see are my 20 other archers. So that's a lot of archers ready to come in and do battle, and they hadn't even been touched yet. And he didn't have anything else fast that would have been able to catch up to my archers. So as long as a couple of units were still out of combat, I was going to be able to start firing on them once I wanted to. So, lessons learned. You really need to press the advantage when you're playing. Once you've got the opportunity to move forward, you do it at every opportunity. Box them into a corner. You need to make sure to watch your flanks. I think I did a good job with that. You need to hold back your reserves as fresh troops. So when you've got guys who either aren't deploying or aren't moving that fast, holding them back so that once you have a few units that end up getting destroyed or at least pretty badly damaged, you have fresh troops who are ready to go. And then roll well, which seems obvious, but a lot of this came down to the fact that I ended up rolling really, really well through no fault of my own. I was consistently, anytime I would need 5 to 6s, I was getting lots of 5s and 6s. So a lot of it comes down to the luck of the dice, but I think I had some pretty good strategy, just based on all my previous wargame experience with everything. I think I did pretty well. So that's about it that we have for today. I thought it was a really great battle report. I also wasn't taking photos intending to do a battle report, so I've got another game on Sunday. We're going to be playing, I think, 1,500 points. At that point, I will be taking photos with the intention of doing a battle report, and so I'll make sure to get lots of good shots in there that are a lot easier for me to point out where everything is and mark exactly which turn things are happening on. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.